Welcome to Run With It, the show that brings you untapped business ideas from successful entrepreneurs. My name is Chris Justin, and I'm here with Ethan Janney. Ethan, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm just working on my sleep and stuff like that in life, and I'm drinking some citrusy water here with some lime in it to keep my health positive. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing just dandy. It's a Friday afternoon podcast for us recording, which is always fun. I feel like it brings out the, a goofier side. So I'm looking forward to having this.
Dandy is an excellent word.
Dandy? Yeah. Underused word, I'll say.
Fine and dandy.
Yeah. We're here with Matt Wilson. He's the co-founder and CEO of Under 30 Experiences. He has got an idea to help digital nomads. I don't know if you like that phrase, but remote workers with families, perhaps, to be able to find good locations across the world to be able to just get there and get going, and without having to worry about Wi-Fi and a crib for a baby and things like that. So, Matt, do you remember when you first thought of this idea?
Yeah, so actually, I have to give full credit to my business partner, Jared O'Toole, co-founder of Under 30 Experiences and Under 30 CEO before that.
Wait a second, what are you doing here? Why don't we get him on the show?
You should have reached out to him. That would have been the thing. He came up with the idea. We were brainstorming. Okay, we've been dramatically affected by COVID-19 in our business. We're in the travel business, and we, of course, are looking on with a bit enviously to all the companies that are doing great because of this. And we're thinking, well, how can we get on the winning side of this thing? And just kicking around ideas, and mainly because now everybody is a digital nomad, right? Almost everyone has remote work privileges if you worked in an office. So you're seeing all of a sudden there's people who are selling their places, trying to move to the suburbs, or everybody and their mother is moving to Florida, fleeing the Bay Area, trying to find lower cost of living, trying to, not be holed up in a small little apartment in a metropolitan area. And so we're trying to come up with a solution for people who want to work digitally, but they are the person in tech. They may or may not have a family, but when you have a family, it's more complicated. And you need really good Wi-Fi, and you kind of need to be just set up and ready to go, kind of like a soft landing, I've heard it referred to as. And Jared spent a lot of time on looking for Airbnbs but he wanted to make sure because, his wife had special requirements with the internet, had to be really strong. She needed, actually, for whatever reason, she needed a place to plug in her desktop. There were a handful of requirements that they had, but he also wanted to be close to the beach where he could go fishing. And so we just kind of saw opportunity for this remote work lifestyle beyond Airbnb, and that the idea is half baked, but we'd like to integrate some piece of technology into it, whether it's a search engine or whatnot. We are more on the travel service provider, which is not as scalable as technology. And so that's where we started to look at this and saying, okay, what is a digital solution here? Now, there could be a concierge service. I'll give one example and then I'll turn it back over to you guys. But my brother had had twins, and we went to go and visit my grandmother in Key West, Florida. And he and his partner found some type of concierge, probably who sets people up with weddings and vacation rentals and this kind of stuff. And they came in and they brought a crib. They brought floor mats for the floors so the babies could safely crawl around and not hit their head. They brought this fence so the baby wouldn't go, I don't know, where my grandmother didn't want them to go. And they rolled in, and in 20 minutes, the whole place was set up. And I don't know, they swiped their credit card and that was it. Oh, they came with a stroller, like the whole, and for twins, that's quite a lot of work. And they weren't working remotely. It was just Christmas vacation. But if you are trying to put in your 40, 50 hours a week or whatever you work remotely, and then have the time when you're off to actually be able to go and fish or surf or go out with the family, just be on the beach, you don't really want to be messing with that stuff. And you don't want to get to a place where, I've worked remotely for the past 10 years all over the world. And I can tell you, when I get to Indonesia and the Wi-Fi is bad, it's really stressful. So trying to solve that problem is what we were kicking around.
That experience that you described sounds pretty magical. I mean, having so basically it's someone just coming to your location. They know what someone with children would need, and they just kind of hit the ground. They have these supplies, they unpack it all, they set it up, and they're out of there, and they collect the fee. That's kind of what that service was doing.
And I'm not saying we have to replicate that, but
Nice.
That certainly added to the experience.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, even from my own experience, I have a 3-year-old, and it's been quite interesting. My wife and I, before we were married and had a kid, and even while we were married, we really enjoyed traveling and just running around, going to different countries, going to different places, going to different Airbnbs and stuff like that. And I was pretty struck by how difficult it became once we had a kid, and the amount of things that you're carrying around, right? Like every time you get on a plane, you got the stroller, and then you got the travel crib, and then you got the extra suitcase with all the other stuff that you need to bring along. It's that car seat, like there's so many different things. And that prospect of just showing up and all this stuff is ready for you, that sounds like kind of a fantasy. So I and there's pain there too, and that's a good place to try to do business, where people have an unsolvable problem. It's causing them a lot of stress, and they just want to get rid of it. So I like this.
It reminds me of Nomad List, which listener may be familiar with. Have you heard of it, Matt?
Oh yeah, I use it all the time.
Yeah. So it's not exactly the same thing here, but it is serving a similar need. It's maybe for a different demographic, someone younger and someone single, but I'm wondering if there's a way. So for the listener who does not know what Nomad List is, it's a community of remote workers that it also tells you which places are the best places to work remotely. So I'm looking at the website right now. You can see Mexico City. It tells you average internet speed. It tells you about how much it would cost per month to live there. It tells you the temperature, air quality index. So it highlights all of those things for you in a very easy to consume format. That is just informational. Of course, it's a little bit different. It's the next level to have someone actually set up the space for you. And I'm thinking that this would be an evolution of that potentially. I'm wondering if Peter Levels, the founder of Nomad List, is looking for opportunities to increase revenue or serve a higher market. And one way to pursue this would be to reach out to him and say, "Hey, I've got this idea to up level your service. Give you a 50% commission." Ethan said 10% earlier. He said I was being too generous, but let's say 50%. If you don't have a lot of experience doing this, maybe you're very generous with that.
Did you just say that just to make me look stingy? What's going on here?
No, that's not stingy. That's like capitalist,
Capitalist.
Yeah, you're fine. I
between 10 and 50%.
Somewhere between 10 and 50%, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you have this ready-made list, and potentially Peter has all of these previous customers who have rolled off because he has a list of people who loved Nomad List 5 years ago, but now they have families and it's not exactly what they need. So you can sell to them very quickly.
By the way, he'd be a great person to work with. I mean, his story is pretty fascinating. He started Nomad List. I think he was doing some sort of a sprint of trying to do a bunch of startup ideas and see which one stuck. He started with just a crowdsourced spreadsheet of data with people living around the world and started to gather a user base and people interested, create a membership model. Simplest thing that he started with was just a paid membership Slack group. And I think by now he's making at least 300,000 on that project, which, to be honest, seems like it probably has room to grow its revenue. 300,000 is not a high revenue business. So number one, he knows how to bootstrap a project. So he'd be a great person to work with and get on your team. But also he has all of this infrastructure laid down in terms of the contacts and potentially the marketing. And it could be quite a fruitful
Ethan,
partnership.
how do you know that Nomad List makes $300,000 in revenue a year? Is that published somewhere?
I mean, I think he actually might have laid it out on his website, to be honest. I think it's at Levels. Oh, his personal website, levels.io/nomad list founder. I believe that's where I got that information. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's probably slightly old though. It's probably not, I guess it could be less now because of all the quarantine and the lack of interest in travel. But that's something I think we should dive into at some point too. We've had some travel related ideas on here recently. And the one thing that's cool about travel related, and I'm counting our scooter episode as travel related, which is a little bit of a stretch, but is just preparing for the rebound, right? Like you said, Matt, I mean, things might be slow now, but one day it's just a wave is going to come in. And for those that aren't prepared, who are still on like pause mode and not prepared and maybe even haven't been, like running up to it, right? Like creating preliminary momentum up to that, extreme travel period. You're going to lose out if you're not prepared. Put it that way.
We're hoping for that snapback. The sooner the better, because we've been preparing for basically the last year.
So thinking about what other approaches do you guys have for getting something like this going? What are some of the first steps? I threw out mine of reaching out to Peter Levels and building a co-branded type thing or extending Nomad List to an up-level market. What other angles can we take?
There are some services. I don't know who's around and who's not, but like Remote Year, for example. Okay, they set you up with places to work and you kind of go on their schedule. But a big side of what they do is community. Now, if you're traveling with families, yeah, it would be nice to get to know other people possibly. And I think we're all in COVID mindset right now when we're not trying to meet other people. That's kind of something to consider. These work-live places are becoming more popular. I know, again, this is a communal thing. We just saw WeWork implode, etc. There's definitely something to be had just looking at Airbnb's pivot that they had to make. All of a sudden, they thought, oh, God, we can't go public. Travel is going to be decimated. And then they realized that, oh, wait a second, people are going to travel. They're just going to travel differently. They're just going to find a cabin in the woods and say, this is way better than my New York City apartment. And they're going to stay for a month. And so just looking at these different solutions, we may be able to draw ideas. That's usually what I go to when I'm in the idea generation phase, is what else exists and how are they solving the problem? And then how do we differentiate ourselves?
Jump back in. We were talking about Nomad List revenue. They're on Indie Hackers. So on Indie Hackers, you can link your Stripe account to the platform so you can actually see how much money they're making, and it's actual proof. So last month it was $26,486.28, December 2020. So about $25K per month. Interestingly, in March and April, they got down to the $12K or so range, but they bounced back up to $25K by July, and they've been holding there since. So they've done decently well.
You can also find Peter Levels' social security number on Indie Hackers profile as well. Well, I was going to bring up this topic that Chris and I were just chatting about a little bit previously, in terms of what's already out there. Now, what about what other businesses out there, not necessarily generate your leads to get started, but like present a model that might be interesting? And one surprising example that popped in my head was McDonald's. So McDonald's has this model. A lot of people consider McDonald's actually a real estate company, right? They buy the properties and build the McDonald's franchise units on those properties, but they own that real estate. And then the franchisee, I think that's the appropriate word, they pay fees in order to run that particular local restaurant. And so we were talking about what, you could actually create, a worldwide network of locations that are specifically for people working remotely, digitally. You would have a lot of power there because you would start to understand how to get great internet set up, things like that. You might even have leveraging power when making purchases, and design skills and things like that. You could use designs over and over again. So it'd be an interesting angle to have, at least in the long term. So maybe you could start with one location, set up your own little digital nomad special place for families in Puerto Rico or Costa Rica or something like that, but with an eye of codifying everything that you do so that you replicate it in other places. And then you can benefit as you build a list of individuals, and you can sort of franchise out what you've learned.
I think that would be a logistical nightmare. I'm sure there are people out there who would be excited by that idea.
We don't have to do it, Chris. That's the nice thing about our show. I can just explain what you need to do, and people can listen. And I could pretend like it's just a hop, skip, and a jump.
I'm thinking about in the Philippines. I lived in the Philippines.
I'm just thinking about, Chris, my island in where was it? In Argentina.
Yeah. You can buy an island in Argentina for $1 million or something like that. But in the Philippines, you can't actually own land unless you're a Filipino citizen, for example. And I'm sure that there are all these other restrictions all across the world to purchasing property, and governments are not. The U.S. isn't maybe the best country in the world in terms of efficiency, but it's
side note, by the way, I think it was Derek Sivers, the founders of CD Baby. I think he wrote a series of books on how to start businesses in different countries, which I think is quite fascinating. So
yeah,
okay, it's terribly difficult. Tell me it's horrible, but if you do think about doing it, Derek Sivers might be an interesting resource. I think he's a really nice guy with a lot of time on his hands. Actually,
I think it'd be far easier and far more scalable to use the properties that other people already have and use the existing infrastructure. If I were doing this, I would not do any of the legwork up front in terms of getting things set up. I would try and get customers. So try and find someone like your co-founder, Matt, who is looking for a place to work, find out where he wants to go. Let's say that he said Jakarta, and then I would go and try and find someone in Jakarta to set up all this stuff. And it'd be a very manual process at first, but I think it would be horribly inefficient to try and predict where people are going to want to go. And then you can, of course, codify how you get all that set up and hire a virtual assistant potentially to do that outreach and to make postings in the local places. You can figure out the scaling piece afterward, but trying to buy real estate all over the place, that makes me, it makes me want to cry thinking about how rough that would be. But
do you have any real estate, like investments?
I have a mortgage on the house.
Yeah, it's intimidating once you first start buying properties. Not that I have one other rental property, but it is intimidating. But once you get one or two,
I just think it'd be so hard to do that in Brazil or.
I'm just going to jump in and tell you from experience. That's very difficult. I mean, I've owned businesses in other countries, or at least I can speak directly to living in Costa Rica for a very long time and owning a business there. And it was very difficult. Financing from banks for real estate is very difficult. I tried to buy property down there. You have to do owner financing unless you're going to fork over a bunch of cash, starting a business like this. And buying this in cash is
unrealistic.
Yeah, but I think what Chris is saying about, set up these places and then figure it out from there, because also tying yourself to one place, this is opposite of the mentality, and not just to one place, like buying a place unless you know that this is going to be a fantastic investment, right? Like I looked into buying property in Nicaragua when democracy was and capitalism were booming. And then all of a sudden, Daniel Ortega decided that, no, we're going to go back to socialism and people are going to be starving in this country. And that's what happened. And so all the people who bought beachfront property and when tourists were flocking there, yeah, that was great. But it's not so great anymore, unfortunately. And touristic locations rotate. And so we've looked into many times, oh, well, we should just buy this hotel. We pack this hotel in many parts of the world. Well, I'm glad I'm not sitting on those notes right now, trying to pay those bills. So
thinking about your main business, Under 30 Experiences, you guys take people 21 to 35 all over the world and give them curated, fun, engaging experiences in ways that would be difficult for them to plan themselves. Why don't you take on this idea? What scares you about this idea that you've shared with us?
Scalability, I think that's the first part. And if I'm going to start another business, honestly, I'd probably like to diversify, especially from what we're seeing in the economic climate. Like I would really like to do something in cryptocurrency right now because that proved to be a lot more anti-fragile than the travel industry. When you have one business that goes down, when some type of, okay, here, let me take another shot and say Black Swan event comes along, well, then you hope that one of your other investments is going to fluctuate in the opposite direction. So I'm definitely a little, maybe over leveraged isn't the right word, but yeah, I'm all in. That's my main business is travel right now. So even though, and I'll just say, I know travel. I know I can do well in travel. It does make a lot of sense to double down on what you know and what you're good at and where your connections are and your experiences are. But yeah, I think I could be successful in other places as well.
Quick question here. Now that you brought up, your familiarity with travel, you mentioned Airbnb. Are you seeing any other players in travel where you're seeing what they're doing and you're saying, oh, wow, they're playing it smart right now? Kind of like we talked about earlier about, preparing for when things are going to start going well. Have you seen anything? You don't have to have, but just curious.
Well, I'm not sure about it. This doesn't exactly answer your question, but one company that I really like is Selena's Hostels. And they probably do buy the real estate and they outfit these hostels, or they buy hotels or whatever, but they've become these kind of nomad hubs. And sure, a lot of them are for backpackers, but now they've pivoted the way Airbnb has, and they're saying, come to Mexico and work and live. We have good Wi-Fi and a place to hang out and a pool and a bar. And, that's for young people who are not so much at risk for COVID. That's very interesting to them. I don't know how well that they're doing. I wouldn't want to stay at a Selena's hostel with my family because it's more of a party place. So yeah, but that was like, there was one that popped up in my town in Costa Rica and I used their co-working space. And yeah, it was a little, I would pass the pool where people were boozing and hanging out at 3:00 in the afternoon, which is fine, but they try to attract people for more long-term stays. So I'm not sure who's really doing well in travel because of this, but that's the pivot that you're seeing is people are doing longer-term stuff.
I wanted to share this story actually from a previous guest of ours, also doing something in the travel space, a little bit aligned with what you're working on. Jules Schroeder, she's episode 23 of Run With It. She was working as a traditional entrepreneur, doing pretty well in her mid 20s. She had some sort of a traumatic accident, I think surfing or something like that. Had some kind of mystical dream almost that she was going to host entrepreneurs within a different country. I think it was Bali or something. And she decided to pursue this idea and it worked out, and I think she gets around, say, 50 attendees. She might have them pay like $5,000 per an event. Can raise a pretty good sum of money that way. And in some of these countries, it might only cost you $1,000 a person for a 4-night stay to work things out. And so in the end, you might walk away with a couple $100,000. So it's possible to do this kind of thing. And we're in this kind of downturn. We've got people who are craving travel. Like you said with Airbnb, people are I got to get out of my house. I've heard this so much. People are moving. It's very clear that we're getting antsy.
I live in Pittsburgh, as the listener may know. And late January in Pittsburgh is pretty rough weather-wise. You don't get a whole lot of sun. You get, it's snowing outside right now. It's in the 20s Fahrenheit. I know people who have left Pittsburgh for Hawaii and Puerto Rico and are just staying there and doing that during COVID because they're not mingling a whole lot. They're not going there to go to restaurants and get in group gatherings, but they're working remotely. They're going to be there for the long haul. I think that I would challenge the idea that demand for this idea doesn't exist. I think people are looking for that. I know someone who they did the same thing from New York. They went to Hawaii and they have a 6-month-old and a 2-year-old. They had to bring one of their mothers to take care of all of the kids while they worked and take care of a lot of the logistics. But I think there are a lot of people out there right now who would benefit from
So here's my idea to get started, which we may also find some type of logistical nightmare, but a lot less low investment, a lot less risk. If you're someone who has a family, knows other people whose family have a family, you just make a post on Facebook. Hey, anybody really antsy to travel? It's in this crazy COVID time, whatever. If you are, get in touch with me and I'll try to set up your trip and I'll try to make it as easy as possible for you, right? I'll get your crib set up. I'll get everything taken care of. Make sure you get the good Wi-Fi. I'll be the intermediary. And you use that not only as a proof of concept, maybe you do the first few for free or for a small fee or something like that, but also just to test what is it going to take to logistically get these things done. And if you feel like you get a ton of responses to that type of a post, then you go, maybe I've got an idea here. And if you move on with it and it's manageable enough, then you think about taking the next step.
Okay, I want to say a handful of things. One, I'll backtrack and just say I don't know the previous podcast guest and how they were doing this, but I don't want anybody on who's listening to think that these type of retreats and stuff should be that profitable because people really can tell. People who come, especially if you're doing this for entrepreneurs, which is how Under 30 Experiences started. We were under30ceo.com. We grew that to about 500 million readers per month. And then we started running retreats, and people are price sensitive. So I just want to throw that out just for anybody listening. Definitely try not to gouge people, be fair with your margins. Under 30 Experiences is a low margin business, and we have to do high volume to be able to really make it work for us, because otherwise people can just do this on their own. And retreats, you really have to sell the community section, community part of it. My wife is a yoga teacher, and so on the side, we'll run yoga retreats, and some teachers who think they're the best teachers in the world will charge $5,000-$10,000 for a yoga retreat, where the accommodations and the food and whatever else is included come out to $2,000. And everybody gets there and they see that there's not the value. You're not getting the value other than, your life better be transformed if that's what you're paying for.
I would lean toward charging per trip. And I'll throw out a number. I'd say $500. It gets you, we'll find the right accommodation for you. We'll do everything for you. You give us, it's a true concierge service. Give us your credit card info. We'll book the location. We'll book the travel. to it and from it if you need to. We'll get you the crib. We'll get you everything that you need to. And then it's just a $500 service fee on top of it. I know personally, if I were to try and set that all up, it would probably take 3 hours of time at least. And I don't know the people there. So if it's, let's say it's 10 hours because I don't actually know someone on the ground who knows the cleaning crew or the Wi-Fi person or all that, then if you start adding that up, I think $500 would be reasonable.
So I'm going to jump in and say that nobody likes service fees. So if you can figure out how to add this in as margin on the accommodations, I would say if you are trying to, look at it as on a per month basis, and if you're going to go away, it depends where you're going, but you're not finding an Airbnb for a month in North America for less than $2,500. Say you were able to negotiate, all right, negotiate the price of the room down, because Airbnb, part of that is all that Airbnb stuff. You have your cleaning fees that get passed through, which is not bad, but as the person as the remote worker, you only get it cleaned when you're done. I would like my place cleaned once a week, at least, if I'm going to, again, focus on working and then going and having fun. So you can add in these things and watch the price kind of jump up. But I would say, and these can be priced out between $2,500 and $5,000 a month. I think for someone who was making six figures in income, I think that's very acceptable. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think that's a good model as well, is just roll it all into the accommodations fee. I was picturing doing it separate, but yeah, I think either way would work. We are at time here. There's a lot more that we could talk about with this idea. I'm glad we got you pumped up about it, Matt. That's always one of Ethan and my goal when we're having these conversations. So that's good to hear. If the listener,
we should start telling people that we've actually just been hired by their competitors to distract them from their existing business.
Get you really excited and split your attention. So to the listener who is also pumped up about this, let us know what you think about it. Where we right? Where are we completely off base? Feel free to send us your advice at update@runwithit.fm. We'd also love a review on Apple Podcasts. That's super helpful in getting more people to find the show. Matt, you talked a little bit about under 30 experiences. Anything else that you'd like to share?
I mean, you can, of course, check us out under30experiences.com. We do trips for young people, ages 21 to 35, and we really focus on community and active trips. So that doesn't have anything really to do with business, although a lot of entrepreneurs do come on our trips, but just fun getaways where you get to meet other people. That's really the point. Anywhere from Peru and Machu Picchu, Costa Rica, Belize. I'm rattling off a few places that are open to U.S. travelers at the moment. And, in 2021, the rest of the world will be open as far as I can tell. So, and on social, Matt Wilson TV is where you can find me. Twitter and Instagram is where I'm most active.
Great.
Thanks so much.
I have a book. I forgot. I have a book, the Millennial Travel Guidebook. Escape more, spend less, make travel a priority in your life. Available on Amazon. I'm supposed to say that. That makes my team happy.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's great. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. Matt Wilson, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
This was fun. Thank you, guys.